We're off on our soils and pastures field trip. We're going to have a look at 3 sites and particularly focus on a little bit about soils, a little bit about pastures, and particularly trying to get you to associate your soils, soil types, soil textures, pH, etc. with what pasture species grow successfully on those soils. So we've arrived at site 1. So this is the clay soil site. It's very different from the other 2 sites. And straight away here you can see examples of this cracking clays or vertisol soils. It's also dark, typically dark colour, and not straight away you can see quite a few different species. So this is Rhodes grass. Rhodes likes fairly fertile soils, good moisture. So that's just beside the road, but that's an example of Rhodes grass. And on the legume side, I noticed straight away over here, this is some Neptunia. Neptunia is a native legume, and very typically, in fact nearly always, is found on clay soils which are neutral to alkaline pH. So this is a native, and in a minute we'll probably see some desmanthus as well. Just as we go along here, there's more Rhodes grass. You can see when it's got moisture and in the right soil, it's very it's quite productive green leafy material. And as I mentioned to you previously, Legume, as you can see here, also likes these cracking clay soils. There's a lot of Legume grown on this type of soil commercially for cattle production. And down here on the cracking clays also, this is desmanthus. So it's been mown here. It's desmanthus just loves neutral to alkaline pH and heavy textured or these cracking clay soils. Also growing here is some of this, it's one of the blue grasses which are typical on these, also on alkaline clay soils. This is a Dicanthium species. Looks a little bit like Indian cooch, but it's not Indian cooch. There's a bit more, this is paragrass again, just alongside of this black cracking clay, and amongst it is some more desmanthus legume. So we'll have a look at a little bit of, they're very hard, but we'll have a look at the pH and texture of this site number 1 clay, cracking clay vertisol soil. So we get a pinch of soil, some indicator, and then some barium sulfate, which is puffed on. So that brings up the colour, and you can see this one is looking slightly darker purpley rather than green or yellow. So yellow would be very yellowy orange acid, and then you go into neutral, and this one, to my eyes, it appears to be quite alkaline in that 8.5 sort of pH. So quite alkaline. So next we'll have a look at this cracking clay in terms of texture. So I've got some dry soil, topsoil. I'm going to wet it and then work it up to see if it can form into a ribbon or a bolus. So I've poured some water on it, just working it around, and it's quite sticky compared to the other sites. It's a bit like putty or plasticine. And now I'm squeezing it out, and you can make a fairly long ribbon before it cracks off. So that indicates it's got a high clay content. So if we were to do that with a sandy soil or one of the other sites that you'll see, it will just fall apart. It won't stick together like that. So it's like potting clay. So you can see there, now it's worked up better. It's several centimetres long before it cracks off. So that's a vertisol or a cracking clay. This is prickly acacia or Acacia nilotica, and it's typically also grows on these vertisol cracking clay soils. So prickly acacia is a woody weed, not toxic, introduced about 100 years ago from Africa. Acacia nilotica, so it comes from the Nile. Provides a bit of shade, and it is a legume. Cattle and sheep will browse on its leaves, so it does provide some nutrition, but it's got those lots of pods, lots of seeds, hard seed, and it spreads badly, and it's a serious weed in Western Queensland. But often where you see it, nearly always, you know, it's on a cracking clay soil. We've arrived at site 2. This is the Stuart Creek alluvial soil site, and you can see it's just here, it's low lying. The soils here that we'll have a look at in a minute have been eroded from the hills up behind the university, as you can see up the back there, over thousands of years, and they've been deposited down here along the side of the creek. So these are typically loamy soils, alluvial soils. They can be quite deep, and they're made up of sand, silt and clay, often in fairly equal parts. So there's a number of species growing here. This is this area has been mown, but this is paragrass. So it hasn't been watered, but because of the good sand, silt, clay mixture, and close to the creek, it's green and quite lush. And then we go over a bit closer to the bank. There's the tall grasses here are mainly guinea grass. So guinea grass likes deep, fertile soils with good moisture. So this is guinea grass, and that's a typical seed head on guinea grass. There's a lot of weeds in here too. So this one here is castor oil plant. It's very typical, grows over a lot of Australia in riparian creek beds, alluvial soils. There's also some Mexican poppy down here. It's quite a bad weed, and a number of other weeds. Also growing here, very obviously, is shrub legume Legume. So Legume leucocephala, and it will grow on clay soils as well as it likes these good alluvial loamy soils. Over here we have some Sarby grass. Sarby grass and paragrass are very closely related. They're both Eurocloas. This is a little bit further away, but also doing well on these alluvial soils. More Guinea grass here. It's one of the dominant grasses just along here. And growing also here is some Centrosema. So Centro typically likes fairly good soils as well, and there's quite a bit of it growing along here. So this is Centrosema molly. It's not flowering, typically 3 leaves like that, and does well on these deep fertile alluvial soils, and you'll see it growing through the Guinea grass. So we'll have a look at the pH here at this site too, the alluvial soil. So it's somewhere in that, it's a bit darker green, probably pH of 7.5 on the topsoil. So we'll now have a look at the texture of this site too, the alluvial loamy site. I can feel it's quite spongy, sort of silky to touch, very fine, and you can see you can make a little bit of a ribbon as you squeeze it between your thumb and forefinger. So yeah, if we look on our chart, so it's coherent, spongy appearance. Ribbon, it's making a bit of a ribbon, so suggests it's a loam, probably I can feel the sand and the silt in it, so a sandy silty loam. This is site 3, and you can see it's described as an open eucalyptus woodland, so it's a fairly natural landscape. A lot of ironbarks, some poplar gums, and the odd melaleuca tree through it, and many native grasses, which are mostly black speargrass and kangaroo grass. We'll go and have a closer look. So as we walk through here, this is fairly typical black speargrass. Noting at this time of year, we're in the middle of the dry season. So everything's pretty dry. Some more here, so not very good quality at this time of the year, and typically the seed heads, the spears there you can see are all clumped together. Sometimes it's called bunch speargrass. And then along a little bit further, there's quite a bit of kangaroo grass here too. So this is kangaroo grass, Semita triandra, and some seed heads here on it, and here. So it's both speargrass and kangaroo grass are native 3Ps. Just moving on a little bit more up through here, you can see they're the dominant species through here. And they're really the backbone of a lot of grazing in northeastern Queensland. See on the track here, the light colour, the light texture of these soils, sandy, silty topsoil over a heavy clay. So this is a duplex. Here we come across an example of the value of our stylo legumes. So this area here is Seca stylo, sometimes called shrubby stylo, and it's perfectly adapted to this light textured soil in northern Queensland. It's a fantastic legume, so well adapted. You can see it's not a lush thing like a clover, but given it's September, no rain for months, it's got this green feed available to your livestock. It makes it very valuable amongst this speargrass and kangaroo grass. Bit of an example of the soil here. You can see, and we'll have a closer look in a minute, but that's fairly typical of this topsoil of this duplex soil at Site 3. Yep, quite green. Somewhere in that slightly acid, 6 to 6.5, somewhere in there. So that's fairly typical of these duplex soils, typical of Site 3. And now we'll have a look at the texture. So I have to wet this up again and then work it. So it's a bit gritty, a couple of little small rocks in it as well. I can feel the sand in it. So it's a sort of a silty, sandy look. Yep. Yeah, it won't make long ribbons because of the sand in it, breaks off. Silty, sandy loam, I would say. Not very sticky. Falls apart. So it's a bit gritty. A couple of little small rocks in it as well. I can feel the sand in it. So it's a sort of a silty, sandy look. Yep. Yeah, it won't make long ribbons because of the sand in it, breaks off. Silty, sandy loam, I would say. Not very sticky, falls apart. So that concludes our virtual field trip. So I hope you've got something out of that, especially relating soils, land types to your pastures. And please read your notes, look at the videos, etc. And it should help you quite a lot. So that's it. Good luck. Cheers, Chris.